And welcome to the Allen Americans podcast, and pleased to be joined by the greatest bus driver in the history of professional sports, the longtime bus driver of the Allen Americans, who has become a great friend, introduced me to OU football, and you can see he's proudly wearing his Boomer Sooner here this afternoon, the great Monty Williams. Monty, welcome to the Americans podcast.
Tommy, boy, great to be with you, my friend.
Well, let me tell you something. I miss you, man. It was just not the same traveling without you. You brought so much entertainment to the road trip, and people always ask, and no doubt even fans have asked me, hey, when are you going to get Monty on the podcast? When are you going to talk to Monty? And all those great stories from over the years. And Monty, let me tell you something. You not only provided the entertainment, but you got us there safely. And you know what? Driving all night like that, and sometimes, for long hours at a time, I don't know how you did it, but you did it. And on behalf of my life, I thank you.
Well, you're welcome, Tommy. There is nothing I have done in my entire 70 years on this earth any more fun than being associated with the Allen Americans and being on that bus with those fellas. They're the greatest guys in the world.
Well, I had the pleasure of being at your birthday party last year with your great family. And, of course, I've gotten to know Terry and the girls very well. So thank you for that invite. Let's talk about how you even became the driver for the Americans. How did that begin back in the day? Because I was trying to remember, and I couldn't remember. I know Scotty somehow found you, but tell us the story.
Well, Scotty Alexander, of course, everybody knows Scotty. He was – you talk about the greatest driver that was ever around. I consider it to be Scotty, and I know a lot of older fellas do too. He was looking for a driver to help him on the long runs. When you drive, according to the Department of Transportation, you're not supposed to drive longer than 10 hours at a time, and they consider that unsafe. So he needed someone to go on the longer trips. Of course, we're going to Canada and Salt Lake City and, all over the country, places we went. There was very few places he could go by himself. So he was looking for somebody to go with him. He lived over here in my area in the mid-cities, and his wife knew a local bus, somebody that drove a school bus over here. And so she asked this lady, she met this lady that drove a bus in some cake shop where they learn how to design cakes and stuff. No kidding. This is what she told me. And this lady said, "Oh, I know this guy. He really likes sports and stuff, and he's he's a likable fella." So she gave this lady my name, got Scotty's wife my name and my phone number. And Scotty just called me out of the blue one day and said he was looking for a driver and wondered if I might be interested. So, and to come to find out, he only lived maybe a mile from where I live, and so we got together, and that's how it started, Tommy.
Well, we're very, very thankful for that, and there are so many great stories from over the years. But one that sticks out of my mind, and I think you'll remember this, we were on our way back from Rapid City, and I think we may have missed a turn, and I remember a couple of the guys up in the front of the bus, Aaron Jens, Dyson Stevenson, said, "Hey, Monty, why don't you pull in here and turn around?" You remember that? You remember that? Remember that night?
Tommy, do I remember that? Tommy, it was me that missed the turn. You can imagine up in South Dakota, there's not a whole lot more than farm to market roads, not a whole lot better roads than that. And we were on one of those roads headed to I-70, which would have got us, closer down to Kansas. So it's the middle of the night. I suspect, Tommy, wasn't it around 2:30 or something like that in the morning? And the roads are not lit, of course. There's no lighting whatsoever and very small signs. Well, I missed the sign to turn at this city to get us over to I-70. And so I did realize my mistake, maybe a half a mile down the road, and I was looking for a place to turn around and go back to the proper road. And so I think it was Dyson. He was Dyson or Rumpel Rump says, look, there's a place. I think it was a farm implement company, if you recall, Tommy. We pulled off there, and we were pulling a trailer also. So you can imagine you got a 48-foot bus plus about another 20, 25-foot trailer behind you. It's not the easiest thing to be back in the middle of the night to get back on the road. And we were kind of in an off angle on that side road anyway to get into this place. So we're thinking, I think as Dyson said, well, maybe that thing goes all the way around the back of that building. So it was like maybe an eighth of a mile around the back of that thing. We thought, well, we'll come around the back of it and we'll just come all the way around and come back on the road. Well, we got up even with that farm implement company, the actual building, and it doesn't go all around. It stops. Oh. So you can imagine this predicament we're in. We can't back up. There's implements, farm implements, trucks, pickups, everything all over the place. We got a problem. So I'll turn it back to you. Do you want me to keep going?
Well, I'll just tell you how it ended. We got stuck in the mud, and I remember Jens, myself, Dyson, several people out there trying to push this bus out of the mud. We got like 2x4s, everything to put under the tires, trying to get this. Not to mention the fact it was cold. It was probably about 20-something degrees.
It was, and wet. You know, it must have just snowed 2 or 3 days before or something because it was saturated. Remember, Tommy, when we tried to back up and get around, we got high centered in the middle of the bus. Remember?
Oh.
We couldn't get off high center.
Trust me, I'll never forget. Not to mention the fact, one of the funniest things in Dyson Stevenson, oh man, I'll give him credit. Dyson was able to go over and hotwire a truck, not to steal it, but pick up to try and get us out of there. And I remember the next day, we eventually got out, but the funny thing was, it wasn't until about 8 o'clock the next morning. And Steve Martinson slept through the entire thing. He woke up the next morning and said, "Where are we?" And I said, "We're still in Nebraska." And he said, "What the heck?" And I said, "Well, you missed quite a night. We got stuck in the mud. We're still stuck in the mud. The tow truck's on the way," which they finally did come. They finally got us out of there, and we moved on our merry way. But the funny thing was Monday morning when I got back to the office, and I took the phone call and said, "Hi, this is so-and-so, and I'm with this company in Nebraska, and your bus got stuck and did quite a bit of damage to our front yard." And she said, and we saw on our video camera, a couple of the guys looked like they hotwired our truck or whatever, and we don't think that you guys were doing anything malicious. We don't think you were trying to steal anything, so. We're not going to press charges, but I thought, oh my goodness. Could you imagine coming back into that business on Monday morning and wondering, first of all, why your yard is all torn up? Second of all, why there are people hot wiring your truck in the middle of the night? They were good people. That was just one of the many funny stories of your time there. But you got to know a lot of good players and become with good friends with good people. We already mentioned Aaron Jens, who was your Mr. Fix-It. If you needed something done, he would come up in the front and get it done for you. Chad Costello, Mike Gunn, the list goes on and on. I know that meant a lot to you. But the one thing fans about Monty Williams, he had a bad habit of doing. Every time he went to a convenience store, he bought about 20 hats. He's got his Allen Americans hat on right now, but he would buy OU hats for everybody on that bus. And by the end of the season, if you weren't an OU fan, you probably never would be, because Monty would convert you for sure. And man, let me tell you something. We appreciate you so much for what you did over the years. Fans and players, they take you for granted. When guys would go to sleep, bus drivers would continue on in the middle of the night, and you were always that guy that got us there safely. So on behalf of the organization for the long time that you drove the Allen Americans bus, and I guess the only way to close this thing is talking about the Big Red Machine. If you could describe that bus in 5 words or less, you would describe it how?
I'm glad it's been retired.
Well,
Tommy, if it wasn't for Graham Truck Service, we'd have never made it on the first trip to Wichita, much less to Salt Lake City or Boise or anywhere else. Those people were fantastic.
they were, and so were you. And you know what? We missed seeing you at the arena a lot last year, but we got to get you and Terry back. You guys are regulars every home game, and obviously we don't know when we're going to start yet. Could be in October, might be later, depending on the way things go here over the next few months. But again, longtime fan, one of the biggest supporters, never misses a broadcast. The great Monty Williams. Thanks for all you've done.
Tommy, it's great being with you, man. You do a great job. Thank you.
Well, and there's just one of many. There are many stories, I'll just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that we could not tell today just because we would hear from it later on or hear about it later on. But, Monty, give my best to Terry. You be careful and stay safe, buddy.
Boomer Sooner, my friend.
There he goes. The great Monty Williams on the Americans podcast.